Okay, so The Last Jedi. I've seen it. I saw it the day before yesterday. I've only seen it once so far. I'm going to see it again to get my opinions kind of more solidified or what have you. But this is a video about The Last Jedi. If you haven't seen it already, I'm going to be talking about bits of plot and bits of spoiler stuff. So spoiler alert, don't watch this if you haven't already seen The Last Jedi and you care about spoilers, which is probably everyone. So my point of view, I liked it. I mean, it's just kind of like paint a picture of my point of view. I'm pretty much a serious Star Wars fan. I have been for a very long time. You know, one of my first memories is sitting on the edge of the couch and my dad setting up the projector to watch the original Star Wars. From memory, I think he didn't have the audio. It was like the old system where you had a reel, literally a reel, you know, projected onto a pull-down screen, all that kind of thing. I don't think he had the audio, or he had half the audio, or there was something wrong with the audio. So I think my first memories of Star Wars is being entranced by these flickering images on this this screen with no audio, and then obviously when I saw it with the audio, which, you know, Star Wars, the soundtrack and the sound effects and everything are a massive part of it. Like my nostalgia for the sound is probably almost more strong than it is for the visuals. It's really important. So either way, what I'm trying to say is it's a massive part of my life. You know, all the way through like the 90s and stuff. I got very much into collecting Star Wars stuff. You know, I've got a lot of the original figures, not all of them. At one time I did have all of them, not anymore. In the 90s I did sell a bunch, but I've got a lot of the original figures, you know, some of them on the blister packs. You know, I've got Luke and Vader and Ben and all the main ones. I've got, you know, if we look over there, I've got like, you know, I've got Star Wars helmets and props and, you know, books and, you know, just tons of stuff, trading cards. I got into the games for a while. I'm a pretty serious fan. I'm a pretty serious Star Wars fan, but I'm not a fanatic. I don't kind of keep up with all the extended universe stuff, and I don't sort of avidly read new Star Wars content. You know, I'm pretty much of the opinion that the original films was what it was all about, and I still have lingering nostalgia, which is, you know, every now and again a little fire is lit under that nostalgia. And, you know, with these new films and everything, in terms of Rogue One and Force Awakens, all that kind of stuff. Obviously the prequels, you know, I didn't like the prequels at all. They kind of like, I blank them out. I put my blinkers on and just pretend they didn't happen, like, you know, many sort of true Star Wars fans do. So yeah, that's my opinion. That's my kind of my angle on this. I'm a pretty serious Star Wars fan. Like I said, not a lunatic. I don't follow every single scrap of Star Wars stuff that comes out, but I am a pretty serious Star Wars fan. And I went in to see The Last Jedi, and I went in as neutral as I possibly could be. I've still not seen any reviews. I've still not read any reviews. And I wasn't keeping up with kind of information about it because I didn't want to know anything. I wanted to go in, you know, complete virgin, and let's get to some sort of conclusions. My first reaction after seeing the film coming out of the cinema was, I really enjoyed it. I really liked it, and I know that there is a bunch of problems, which I'll kind of talk about some of those problems and some of my opinions on where they could have done things better or different. But my gut feeling is it felt like Star Wars. It had humour, it had action, it had a bit of soul and heart, and the characters were diverse and interesting. You know, some of the new ones that they've added, stuff like that. It was a little bit too long, and they could have, you know, I would love to see a kind of director's cut or an ultimate cut of this where they cut out some of the stuff that I didn't like, and make it a little bit more compact. You know, I know they want to make this great big product, and they want people to come away from the cinema feeling they got their money's worth, but I think they would have got their money's worth and then some if you could sort of cut maybe 20 minutes out of it or something like that. So yeah, I'll be interested in looking at what they could do to make it better down the line, you know, 3 years down the line when they realise, oh, we shouldn't have done this. But okay, so let's get into some of the details. Again, this is talking about The Last Jedi, and this is no holds barred, so there will be spoilers. It's just my opinion, and, you know, my opinion isn't worth any more than anybody else's opinion, so I'm not sort of trying to stand here and say I'm any kind of authority on this. I'm not. I've only seen the film once, and my opinion probably will change when I see it again. But again, I warn you, this is going to be spoilers, so don't watch this if you haven't already seen it and you care about spoilers, which should be anyone that cares about movies, in my opinion. You know, let's face it, go in with open eyes, open ears, and experience it virgin. That's what I say when it comes to films that are vaguely important to you. Okay, so that's the spoiler alert out of the way. So okay, so things that I loved, things that I liked. I mean, let's start with let's just break down the film loosely. So we immediately go into the action from Force Awakens, directly off the back of that. You don't even need to read the crawl at the beginning, because it's just going straight into, you know, it could have just been cut from the end, from the last scene of Force Awakens. They could have cut straight to the next scene in this, and you wouldn't have missed a beat. Just go straight into it. You know, Rey's just gone off to find Luke, you know, handing the lightsaber, and obviously, you know, Finn's a bit beat up, and the Resistance or Rebels, whatever you want to call them, they start calling themselves the Rebels and stuff in this film more, because obviously they're like a smaller, kind of more beat up group, and so they kind of you know, they are rebelling against this bigger power, which the First Order has become this sort of bigger, more encompassing power. In The Force Awakens, the First Order kind of felt like it was a sort of nasty Nazi group, spin-off group, that was kind of like gaining power, but it didn't seem like gigantic, like, you know, encompassing and empowering, not empowering, but you know, ruling the universe with a iron glove or what have you. Didn't quite feel like that in the last one. And this one it more does, because, you know, there's less rebels now, less you know, there's less of the good guys basically, and it feels like there's a lot more of the bad guys, and they've got a lot more of the power. Okay, so yeah, so we go straight into that. Excuse me. So the rebels are you know, basically running away from the First Order, and yeah, Finn's kind of beat up, and he's still, you know, physically healing from you know, his kind of confrontation at the end of Force Awakens. And there's some lovely things right at the very beginning with Poe and General Hux. Is it General Hux? Yeah, General Hux. And they have a little bit of a sort of back and forth where Poe's stalling for time and pretending that he can't hear him. It's like, oh, you know, I'm losing you kind of thing. And I really like that. That went straight into inject some humour into what could be a serious, you know, overly serious scene. I have heard a few people saying that there's too much humour in this film, and I would agree. In some places it is out of place, and it's kind of like trying to make light of something that it's taking things off in a light humoured direction, a light tone, when the tone should have stayed a bit darker. I was hoping, Empire is my favourite film, and I was hoping that this film was going to be as dark and as, it doesn't need to be serious, you know, there's still even light moments in Empire, but I was, you know, obviously Force Awakens was so much A New Hope, you know, it was just like, there was it was almost like scene by scene in some places from A New Hope. It was so much of a kind of a reboot, if you will. And like I said, Empire is my favourite film, and I was hoping this was going to be very much like Empire, and in places it certainly is. But there was a lot of humour, which obviously lightens everything. In places the humour fitted perfectly, in other places it just was like, you know, the bit where you have you know, Ben, Kylo Ray, he's like got his top off and he's talking to Rey over the Force, and she's like, oh, can you put some clothes on? I mean, I did probably slightly smile at that moment. It wasn't like I was cringing, but thinking back, that was out of place. There's quite a few times when they used humour in the wrong place. Okay, so let's get back into the kind of the breakdown. So yeah, so first of all, obviously we have Rey handing over the lightsaber, and then Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder like, well, this piece of crap kind of thing. I thought that was great. I thought that was because it was such a solemn moment, you know, with like the end of The Force Awakens, with the camera going round, she's standing on the top of this, you know, giant craggy rock on this island, and Luke's not saying anything with his hood and all that kind of thing. And to break that with a light moment at that point, and something which is kind of like, excuse the train noise, something that's just so important to the fans, you know, Luke's lightsaber, and that first sort of introduction to the Luke character back into the you know, the films. I thought that was great. It was a great way to subvert expectations and play with this wonderful universe that we all love. And then we go into that. I was a little bit worried that there was going to be kind of a training montage, you know, a bit like sort of Kill Bill. Was it Kill Bill 2 or something, when she goes up and the guy with the long moustache and all that kind of thing. And I thought for a minute we were going to get some sort of like you know, Japanese sort of martial arts training montage, which I was really hoping they didn't do, and they didn't do. they went off in a sort of, you know, different direction, where Luke's now this sort of very bitter old man. And I know I've heard a few people, you know, like I said, I've been trying not to listen to any reviews or anything, but I've heard a few people saying that they didn't like Luke's behaviour in this, and he wasn't very Luke-like. I thought he was brilliant. I preferred Luke's performance and Luke's character traits in this than I did. You know, Han was just the old Han and the new Han. They're just kind of like the same character, but he was older. But he didn't, you know, he was an old man, so he couldn't really quite carry that off the way he could in the original films, obviously. Leia is still just kind of like Leia. She's just an old original Leia. But I love what they did with the Luke. He was kind of this bitter, you know, he's been through a lot. Obviously, he's seen his, you know, one of his best friends and his sister's child turn to the dark side, and he feels responsible for that. When he kind of is responsible for that to some degree. And so he would feel bitter, and he would be twisted, and he would be, and he's older, and he's turning his back against everything. You know, I liked what they did with Luke. I thought Luke was great. He still had a little bit of that innocent farm boy still in him, but he was now a bitter, you know, it's not dark, twisted old man, but he, you know, he was certainly kind of turning his back on everything, and just obviously felt like he'd fucked up royally, and, you know, just couldn't figure out, you know, do you know what I mean? He just massive sort of self-doubt, and just you know, shutting himself off from the world. I thought that was great. And anyway, so then we go into you know, we have Finn saying, you know, waking up like, where's Rey kind of thing, which is, you know, that's kind of that all fits, that's all good. Then we have there's a whole bunch of little scenes where we eventually get to the point where the First Order are chasing down the rebels, and they've got minimal fuel left, and it all starts to feel quite desperate. I've skipped a big chunk there to get to there, but let's kind of like cut ahead to the main sort of bits of the movie. And I like that. I like how sort of desperate that felt, and you know, they're kind of like, you know, they're on their, it's like the cops are chasing the you know, the guy down the highway, and he's only got a little bit of fuel left, and he's not going to make it. And you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of bad guys chasing down behind them. I liked how sort of desperate that felt, and kind of they're really sort of painted into a corner. And yeah, I did like that. As soon as we get the Rose character coming, I didn't dislike Rose as a character. I thought she was fine. The things I didn't like about her was falling in love with Finn. I thought that was just absolutely ridiculous. It's just way too quick, and just on a crowbar and extra bit of sexual tension into there. And then they went off to this you know, casino kind of Monte Carlo. What's it called? It's something Canto Bight. That's it. They went off to the Canto Bight sort of rich play area sort of thing, and that all of a sudden felt completely like you know, Luc Besson sort of Fifth Element film. It didn't feel like Star Wars anymore. It didn't. I mean, I didn't hate it. There was some entertaining little bits in there. Oh, by the way, you know, the giant horse creatures. I'm going all over the place with my thoughts on this, by the way, so it's just coming back to me as I'm remembering it. So apologies for the digressions everywhere, but anyway, yeah, the horse creatures that they would race around, if that didn't look like a Last Guardian, then I don't know what the hell did. I don't know how many of you might have seen the Last Guardian, a video game. I still haven't actually played it, but it's a game on the PlayStation, and it was one of those games that was in production for a very long time. But the creature in that looks just like those horses, the long ears, the kind of like sorrowful kind of face, and the kind of dog-like, half dog, half kind of mammal horse dog thing. Anyway, yeah, that really looked like the Last Guardian, those horse things. And then you get the kind of slavery thing with the children who are kind of like, you know, being bossed around, and then you get the kind of the uber rich who are making their money from selling their arms to the goods and the bad. I didn't hate the concept of the place and the people. I didn't like the kind of the moral stance of, oh, you know, this, you know, he says, oh, this place is amazing, and she's like, oh, well, you look closer. I didn't like that. I didn't like the reason for any of it to happen. Like, I think it all could have been cut out. It was like, you know, they went off in this ship to go and get this you know, the guy who could break the code, this, like, you know, Uber code guy. That felt a bit weak, and it felt like a whole sort of extra chunk of stuff that we didn't need. I would have rather have stayed with Rey and Luke in the training. I mean, I know we had a fair amount of that, but I would have rather have stayed with that and had a couple of different things going on rather than this whole extra sub story. And like I said, the whole Rose falling in love with Finn felt wrong. The timing of the introduction of that was a bit off as well. I think if they had to go off sooner, if Finn and Rose, if they had to go off a bit sooner and had that subplot going on, maybe it would have felt a little bit more kind of it would have gelled together a bit better. There was just something off about that whole thing, and I think they could have probably done without it entirely. Other things I didn't like. I'm just sort of bouncing around ideas at the moment, so apologies. But I didn't like Leia flying. I thought that was ridiculous. I think that Leia should have, they should have got rid of Purple Rinse. What was her bloody name? The lady with the purple hair who Poe was bouncing off of in a sort of negative way, and then it turns out she was all good and she sacrificed herself. They could have got rid of her entirely, and Leia could have basically stepped into the shoes and done that role and sacrificed herself. And they could have, obviously Carrie Fisher, God bless her, she's gone now. So, and I know they didn't know that when they were writing it, but I think that would have been a great way to send off Carrie Fisher, sorry, Princess Leia, in a sort of really poignant way. The whole her coming back to life and then using the Force. I've got no problem with her having lots of power in the Force. She's Luke's brother. She's meant to be powerful. That doesn't bother me. But the whole flying through space, flying through the vacuum of space, and then putting her hand on the door and then getting back inside, it just felt all a bit wrong and it was a bit cringy. I could have done without it, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, I think Leia should have basically been the one to sacrifice herself and done the light speed jump into the bad guy's mega ship, whatever the fuck it's called, and cut that in half. That would have been a nice send off for Leia. And yeah, get rid of Purple Rinse. Her character just faintly irritated me, and I just don't think it was needed. Anyway, so we have Finn and Rose at this casino place. Sorry, I'm bouncing around all over the place. And then they meet up with the DJ, the kind of the guy with the sort of the tics. And I think his character was great. It added colour. It added another interesting character. And he has ambiguous intentions, and I think with very polarized films with good and evil and all this, you do need a bunch of characters in the middle that are ambiguous. Like obviously you have like Lando and stuff. You didn't know whether Lando was good or bad, and I'm not saying he's a new Lando, but he's another one of those characters where he could have gone either way and you wouldn't have been surprised, and I quite like that. But again, I guess he wouldn't have been an included character if they didn't go to that Canto bite. So there's some argument for that, I guess. He wasn't pivotal. He wasn't massively necessary. They could have done, the film could have done without him. But I liked him as a character, and I liked the performance of the actor's name, who I've now forgotten. But yeah, I liked his performance. By the way, I liked pretty much all of the performances. Obviously Daisy as Rey, and Boyega as Finn, and I think the performances were all really good and consistent. And Luke's performance was, in my opinion, way above Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. Sorry, Carrie, I know you're gone and you're a legend, but I think Luke's performance was really good in this film, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so get back into my thoughts. So yeah, the Purple Rinse she could have fucked right off, as far as I'm concerned. She didn't really annoy me, but it was just unnecessary. It was unnecessary, and I would have liked to have seen Leia being the self-sacrifice. She's on her last legs and everything anyway, in terms of she might have been in a bad way after some explosions, and obviously with her son deciding not to kill her and then the ship going up anyway, she could have been on her last legs and then sort of sacrificed herself, and that would have been a good send-off for her, for that as a character. And then we have the kind of astral projection thing. With the Snoke, okay, so let's talk about Snoke briefly. So he's just a generic ultimate evil character. So in terms of how I think about that, okay, this is a bit of a tenuous link, but Time Bandits, they find a lump of pure evil in the microwave in Time Bandits. I know this is really, really sort of random, but that's how I see Snoke. He's just this pure kind of evil. He has, he's a tiny bit of humour, but he's full of self-confidence. We didn't really get to see anything other than just this husk of pure evil, which is fine, because I think he basically is there to help show why you know, Kylo Ren, Ben is turned to the dark side because he's being manipulated, and then we see we think we're going to see some redemption with you know, Ben Solo killing Snoke, which I liked, by the way. I thought that was fine. You know, I was totally okay with the lightsaber cutting him through the middle. I was fine with that. But in terms of Snoke, I think Andy Serkis did a great job of, even though he didn't have much to work with, he's just an evil character, which you think, okay, evil characters are fun to play and they're entertaining to watch, and yeah, they are. But he was just a bit two-dimensional, and he was just a bit sort of empty. But I still enjoyed watching him, and he still was a great evil character. But he was almost like too evil. Like, Kylo Ren's character is great because he's like this petulant young child who's powerful but has self-doubt, and like, he is interesting, and you know, he's kind of just has way more depth than Snoke. Obviously, way more depth. But I was okay with Snoke going, and I was okay with him going the way he went. In terms of Phasma going like that, I thought that was pretty weak, and Phasma was just generally didn't do much throughout all of the films. I don't think she's gone. I think we're gonna see her again, and she's gonna have a scarred eye, and she's gonna maybe there's gonna be some more interesting stuff going on with Captain Phasma. Okay, so let's try and bring my thoughts back a little bit. So yeah, I didn't like the Leia flying. She should have sacrificed. I didn't like Purple Rinse. I was fine with Snoke, but he wasn't that interesting as a character. Ben sort of flip-flopping between good and bad. I liked that. I liked the performance between Rey and Ben in terms of Ben Solo. I thought that was really good. Like I said, the Canto Bite thing, you probably could have done with that entirely. Then we have the sort of the astral projection thing. We have Luke, you know, sitting there, and then, I mean, you know, we saw that glimpse of the X-wing in the water. We all thought, you know, I like the way they did that. We all thought that was going to be him raising that up and then flying back. So I liked the way they sort of nodded at that, and then, you know, gave you an excuse for Luke suddenly being there in the fray. I didn't mind the fact that he wasn't really there. I think that was kind of, I kind of knew it straight away, though, to be honest. I think that was one of the things I was slightly ahead of some of the other moviegoers. I noticed as soon as they cut down to that salt and saw the red, wherever everyone puts their feet, you know, kind of like this is red stuff going on, and we're in the kind of trenches, very much like Empire, and one of the guys looks down and touches it, goes salt. That was a very specific thing to point out, so I knew the fact that these things, this salt plane left a mark when you walked on it, I knew that was going to be a plot device straight away. So then as soon as you saw Luke and he's adjusting his stance and his foot just moves slightly and there's no red mark under his foot, I kind of knew straight away he's not really there. So that was one of the few things where I was actually ahead of a few people, I think. And I was okay with it. So, you know, when he was getting bombarded and stuff, I was like, yeah, he's not there, is he? But yeah, I was totally fine with that, and I didn't. And I think I can imagine people wouldn't like the way Luke then left. You know, he goes through all that, he's massively powerful, he can project himself millions of miles and all this kind of thing, and then he just kind of goes out with a whimper. I was actually okay with that. I was okay with that because it's like Yoda. I mean, Yoda went with a whimper. You know, he just became an old man, and it's like death isn't the same in the Star Wars universe. Death isn't the same. You know, Ben self-sacrificed, got cut in half by Vader. Like, you know, I will become more powerful than you can ever imagine, all that kind of thing. That's the wrong quote, but you know what I'm saying. He transfers to the sort of ghost world, or whatever you want to call it, the afterlife. And Yoda does the same. You know, his blanket just shrinks down, and so that was fitting that Luke kind of just went off like a wisp of smoke. I thought that was fitting somehow. Yeah, I was totally fine with that, and I was, like I said, I was fine with the astral projection. And then we have, let's go back to the island for the training quickly. In terms of the mirror room, you know, the big butthole, the big sphinxter, the evil place, which obviously you know, mirrors in Empire, where Luke goes in and fights Vader, and then sees his own face in Vader's mask. you know, that was obviously you know, a nod towards that, but not a direct nod. But you know, in my opinion, it's like, you know, it's the dark side which she's drawn to, and we want to see how she deals with it. That whole infinity mirror thing with the clicking and stuff. I didn't hate it. It was a bit odd. I think that's one of the bits that I really need to excuse the train. I think that's one of the bits that I really need to watch again to get my head around if I hated it or not. It threw me slightly, not in a bad way. I thought it was. I mean, it's very, you know, we want to show some sort of growth. You know, Rey's, it's not really about physical training with, you know, the whole dealing with the Force thing. It's all internal, and so we want to see some sort of growth or realization or something. And I'm not saying that did that, but that's obviously an incredibly hard thing to do because it's pretty much all internal. So they needed something there. I don't know whether that was it, but I didn't hate it. I know that's a bit vague, but I'm just not sure about it. It's kind of, I think maybe when I watch it again, I'll get where they were going with it a bit better. I mean, I know that it was basically just trying to show some sort of self-awareness and you know, becoming in tuned with the Force in some sort of interesting way, and seeing the dark side of herself, and you know, the whole mirror thing. Like, I get it, but it was a little bit weird as well, a little bit kind of trippy. Okay, so and then we have, you know, the very ending, and you know, they're basically escaping, and the ice critters show them away, and Rey moves all the rocks using her Force, because that's a little flick back to the, you know, rock lifting obviously in Empire as well, and obviously what he says in Last Jedi. Yeah, basically, so. Yeah, I'm kind of got to the end of the film there, going to sort of bouncing around a little bit. I didn't mention Yoda. So Yoda, I think Yoda's inclusion was great. He was wacky, silly. He was like the original Muppet Yoda. He looked a little bit odd when he first appeared. I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. But the minute his little legs were kicking and he was laughing, then he ends up like burning the tree with all the sacred Jedi scripts in, all that kind of thing. I enjoyed it. I'm really surprised that I enjoyed it, because I can imagine, you know, if someone told me, oh, Yoda's going to be in this, I'd be like, oh, really? Oh, fuck, I'm not looking forward to this. But it was just like the proper Jim Henson's original Muppet Yoda, behaving like a wacky little freaky guy is. Like, they could have easily taken it in a sort of, you know, mystical, solemn way. They could have easily done that. That's where most people would have expected it to go, and it would have been a little bit flat and boring, but they didn't. They took it in a fun Muppet way. Another thing about the creatures, I loved loads of the creatures in this, and especially like little odd extra ones, like the fish nuns on the island. That was really sort of Terry Gilliam for me. I really liked those sort of creatures, because they're kind of like, they're odd, and they come out of nowhere, and they look really, they fit into their surroundings, and I just like them. So, and yeah, and Yoda was another one of those things where they clearly must have, I don't know, but they must have used a puppet and then filmed it and added a bit of CG here and there, but it looked puppet controlled to me entirely. So I was big thumbs up on that, and yeah, it was a nice inclusion, and it kind of, the fact that Yoda was like, yeah, burn it all, fuck it. I thought, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that inclusion. And there we go. My camera battery's flashing, so I'm gonna wrap up, and I'm clearly just sort of waffling all over the place anyway. But I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. They're not, obviously not very controlled thoughts. They're just all over the place. But in general, I really liked it. I can see why some fans are going to hate bits of it. The Canto Bite, the Flying Leia, and some of those elements that, you know, Rose falling in love with it. I can understand why some people aren't going to like some of that stuff. But I actually liked it more than Force Awakens, and I liked Force Awakens. Force Awakens had too much fan service in, which you kind of expected, you know, with Han Solo appearing and almost like waiting for a minute for the applause to die down, even though, you know, there wasn't applause. But you get what I'm saying, like real fan service, which is fine. You know, they have to do that, but they might have done it a little bit too much in Force Awakens. I actually really liked Rogue One. I know it's not everyone's favourite film. It's a different sort of film. It's basically a excuse me, I've been talking too much. It's basically a war film. You know, it's a World War II kind of like gritty war film. It's that side of Star Wars. It's the war side of Star Wars. It's the Wars from Star Wars. See what I did there. I liked it, I think, more than most people did. I would put it up there with A Force Awakens. I think most people put it quite a bit lower, but for me, I put it up there. You know, it's still nowhere near Empire or you know, A New Hope, but it's still a really solid film, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I probably need to watch that one again quite soon. But just in general feedback, I really like this film, and I'm going to go and watch it again, and maybe I'll start to pick a few more holes out of it. But my general feeling is I love the new characters. I love where they're going with it. They didn't annoy me too much. They didn't kill anything that I loved dearly. You know, that Luke was great, for God's sake. Yoda was great. Okay, Leia, yeah, flying through space. Nah. But it didn't kill. It didn't kill anything. It didn't ruin anything for me. It just, they did a few things that I wasn't 100% happy for. So I hope you guys liked it as well. The camera battery's flying, flashing at me, and I'm not going to do this more than once because I just wanted a sort of blah 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 thoughts out there kind of video. Oh, the porgs. I didn't mention the porgs. Yeah, I didn't really like those. I didn't hate them. Let's face it, they're just like Ewoks, aren't they? They're just like another annoying little creature, which is fine. There's a little bits of humour with Chewie and going to eat them and stuff. Sorry, I could talk about this all fucking day, but I'm going to let the camera rule. I'm going to let the camera call quits on me because the red light's flashing. Peace out, guys. I hope you liked it, and yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'm sure about maybe 10 people's going to watch this because who cares, you know. But if you do watch this and and you are a Star Wars fan and you've got opinions, I'll be interested in hearing. Right, I've got this out of my system now. Now I can go and actually watch some other people's reviews and see what they thought, and yeah, maybe cross-reference what's rattling around in my head with some other hardcore fans. I might even watch Force Awakens again as well. Anyway, Merry Christmas, guys. Peace out, and I shall catch you next time.